The clinking of silverware against porcelain, the oppressive heat of a crowded dining room. You speak a single sentence about a quiet victory, the air shifts. A fractional pause, an uncle reaches for a glass, a sibling changes the subject entirely. Your words hang in the space above the plates, dissolving into nothing. The sudden, suffocating feeling of being entirely transparent. You were told it was just a lapse in conversation, a natural shift in the room's attention. That is a lie. You have just triggered kinship information asymmetry. It is the mechanical process by which a familial hierarchy neutralizes a threat to its equilibrium by entirely starving the new data of oxygen. Everything that follows in this analysis will reveal why this exact mechanism runs silently beneath every interaction you have ever had with the people who share your blood. Understanding this is not a tool for connection, it is a permanent weight. What has been invisible to you for decades will now be starkly, unavoidably visible in every room you enter. This is the price of continuing to listen. The blindness is comfortable, the vision is permanent. The familial unit is not a sanctuary of unconditional support. It is a biological cartel. From a mathematical distance, it appears as a network of shared history and mutual survival. In reality, it is a rigid distribution of status points, constantly calibrating to prevent any single node from accumulating enough gravity to disrupt the orbit of the whole. Every family requires a designated failure, a designated caretaker, a designated success, and a designated anchor. These roles are not assigned by merit or personal preference. They are assigned by the structural necessity of the group. When one unit attempts to change its designation, the entire grid experiences a threat to its structural integrity. The system does not care about your individual happiness or your self-actualization. The system only cares about its own stability. It will ruthlessly suppress any mutation in the established hierarchy to maintain the predictable flow of power. Bring it closer. You sit in a living room. The television is murmuring in the background. The plates are cleared. You announce a shift in your life, a new financial venture, a quiet ambition, a move to a new territory. You expect the environment to bend, to accommodate this new version of you. Instead, the room absorbs the information and immediately begins processing it through the filter of established roles. If your new ambition threatens the established hierarchy, the room will not attack you directly. That would require acknowledging your potential power. Instead, the room will deploy a collective, synchronized friction, a subtle deflation, a calculated pivot to a mundane topic. The system is mechanically pressing you back into the exact shape of the space you were permitted to occupy. The geometry of the room itself seems to alter, aligning against the intrusion of your new identity. The system registers disruption and responds with the deployment of a vacuum. This is the weaponization of null space. When a hierarchy is challenged by unauthorized ambition, it does not strike the ambition, it starves it of the social friction required to make it real. The mechanism recognizes that human psychology requires reflection to validate reality. By collectively withholding that reflection, the system creates an artificial pressure. The silence is not an absence of response. The silence is a highly coordinated, active compression designed to force the rogue element to collapse under its own unacknowledged weight. It is the application of psychological deep water pressure, squeezing the oxygen out of the new idea until it implodes silently. You tell a parent about a milestone you have achieved. The response is a 2-second pause, a slow blink, and a question about something entirely unrelated, perhaps the weather, perhaps a trivial chore. This is the deployment of the vacuum. The silence in those 2 seconds is deafening. It forces you into a state of rapid psychological backpedaling. You begin to question the value of the milestone. You begin to over-explain, to fill the quiet with justifications. You are bleeding out energy into a room that refuses to acknowledge you have even spoken. You are fighting a ghost. The harder you fight to be seen, the more erratic you appear, which only provides the system with the justification it needs to dismiss you entirely. You become the architect of your own unmaking. The layer beneath the layer is absolute. The silence is not meant to communicate disapproval. Disapproval is a form of respect. Disapproval acknowledges that your actions have consequence and mass. The silence is designed to communicate irrelevance. The system is demonstrating its absolute sovereignty over your reality. The moment you begin frantically talking to fill that silence, you are explicitly confirming that the system has the power to dictate your internal state. You are proving that your ambition is not a sovereign act, but a plea for permission. By withholding the permission, they maintain the control. The silence forces you to negotiate against yourself, lowering your own perceived position until it safely matches the baseline they assigned to you at birth. The game was rigged the moment you sought their eyes for confirmation. You have spent years agonizing over why your words were not persuasive enough, why your achievements were not grand enough to force their respect. You believed it was a failure of your communication or a flaw in your character. This is the misposition. The outcome was mathematically guaranteed by your coordinates in the hierarchy. The system was never evaluating the quality of your ambition. It was only measuring the threat to its own structural integrity. Your effort was irrelevant. The position dictated the response. You cannot out-communicate a structural deficit. This dynamic operates exactly like load-bearing architecture. Attempting to move a single pillar of your identity threatens the structural collapse of their entire psychological blueprint, forcing the surrounding walls to bear down upon you to prevent the shift. There is no combination of words that will force a closed system to applaud the destruction of its own equilibrium. Here is where it flips. Prestige operates on a separate frequency from dominance. Dominance is loud. Prestige is a gravitational pull generated by immense mass and absolute stillness. Families are designed to distribute weakness. They bond through the mutual confession of flaws. It creates a collective insurance policy. If everyone is flawed, no one can leave. To remain in the hierarchy, you are expected to continually offer up evidence of your ongoing struggles. You're expected to bleed. The shared bleeding creates the illusion of intimacy, but mechanically, it is the constant submission of collateral. The system collects your vulnerabilities and stores them as a guarantee that you will never outgrow the perimeter. You stand in the kitchen. A relative probes you about your finances, a recent failure, or a deeply personal anxiety. They frame it as care. They frame it as a desire for intimacy. You offer them the truth of your struggle. The room breathes a collective sigh of relief. You think you have bonded. In reality, you have just fed the machine the exact data it requires to keep you categorized as a dependent node. The system processes your vulnerability not as a bridge for connection, but as an anchor to keep you safely in the bay. You have confirmed you are still small enough to control. Scarcity of attention functions as a multiplier of perceived value. The system measures power by the amount of information that is withheld, not by the amount that is shared. When a node in the hierarchy ceases to broadcast its internal state, it creates an informational void. The system abhors a void. It will assign disproportionate weight to the node that refuses to explain itself. This is the mechanical reality of prestige. It cannot be claimed through noise. It can only be constructed through the disciplined rationing of access. By denying the system the data of your struggles, you force it to recalculate your mass based on entirely unknown variables. You receive a probing text message from a sibling about a sensitive topic. Instead of the usual immediate paragraph-long justification, you reply hours later with a neutral, four-word acknowledgement. You do not explain the delay. You do not apologize for the brevity. The social environment immediately fractures. The recipient is forced to confront the absence of your usual anxiety. They must suddenly expend their own psychological calories to interpret your stillness. You have shifted the burden of processing from yourself to them. You are no longer frantically managing their perception. You have become a fixed coordinate they must navigate around. The vacuum is now working for you. Most people never realize that overcommunication is a subconscious plea for mercy. When you lay all your struggles bare, you are signaling to the hierarchy that you lack the internal architecture to contain your own reality. You are asking the collective to hold your weight. The hierarchy will gladly hold it, but in exchange, it will permanently revoke your authority. The moment you withhold your struggles, you signal that you are entirely self-contained. The system processes this containment as a threat, but it is a threat it must respect. You are no longer asking for permission to survive, you are demonstrating that you already are. This dynamic exposes the familiarity decay principle, a mechanical law that dictates how excess exposure mathematically degrades authority within closed systems. Machiavelli observed that men are driven by two principal impulses, either by love or by fear, but familiarity breeds a contempt that neutralizes the effectiveness of both. Imagine two sons returning to the familial house for a holiday. The first son enters loudly, immediately unloads his grievances about his commute, his stressful career, and his financial liabilities, seeking the warm embrace of shared misery. The family offers sympathetic murmurs, pats him on the shoulder, and subtly moves him to the peripheral seating of the room. The second son arrives later. He is polite, entirely opaque, and offers no data about his struggles or his victories. He sits quietly, observing the room. The air around the second son thickens. The family orbit distorts to accommodate his silence. They filter their words around him. They seek his eye contact before making decisions. The first son traded his weight for comfort and dissolved into the background. The second son retained his mass, and the room was forced to continuously calculate his position. A hierarchy will never fear a man who has already handed over the blueprints to his own destruction. Go deeper. Hierarchies require mapped boundaries to function efficiently. The system must know exactly where the edges of your tolerance lie, so it can safely operate right up against them without triggering a catastrophic reaction. In a biological family, these edges are mapped in childhood. Your triggers, your emotional wounds, and your threshold for pain are painstakingly catalogued by the collective. This map allows the system to control you through subtle application of pressure to known weak points. When you confirm that those old triggers still function, you validate the system's map. You prove that you are still the exact same geometry they quantified decades ago. You sit across the table during a tense negotiation over a familial obligation. A comment is made a precise, surgical strike, targeting an old insecurity about your competence. It is delivered with a smile, cloaked as a joke. You react, you raise your voice, your face flushes, you defend yourself vehemently. The room watches you perform. You believe you are establishing boundaries by fighting back. The system observes only that the button still works. You have provided free diagnostic data confirming that their control panel is still fully operational. Unpredictability operates as consequence, anxiety within a rigid structure. When a hierarchy applies pressure to a mapped trigger and receives no reaction, the system experiences a critical failure of its predictive models. The map is suddenly void. If the old buttons no longer work, the system cannot calculate what will happen if it pushes further. It is forced to halt. The withdrawal of a predictable reaction creates an immediate surge of anxiety in the aggressor, because the absence of a known response implies the presence of an unknown retaliation. Unpredictability is not chaos, it is the strategic denial of data. The identical scenario replays. The surgical comment is made, the joke lands. You do not smile, you do not frown, you do not defend yourself. You hold eye contact with the speaker for 3 full seconds in absolute, dead stillness, and then you slowly turn your head and address someone else about a completely mundane detail. The air in the room instantly turns to ice. The speaker is left hanging in the void, their strike unacknowledged, their map destroyed. They expected a predictable dance of offense and defense. Instead, they stepped off a stair that wasn't there. They must now silently calculate if they have crossed a line that will trigger an unmapped consequence. The deeper implication is that emotional reactivity is a form of subordination. When you react, you are agreeing to play the role of the predictable pawn in their psychological game. You are moving exactly where the board dictates you should move. True dominance is never displayed through a loss of temper. Dominance is displayed by a terrifying immunity to the stimulus. When you stop reacting to the mapped triggers, you force the family to treat you as a newly discovered predator in the environment, something that looks familiar but behaves with entirely alien, unreadable mechanics. You have always felt ashamed of your emotional outbursts, blaming yourself for a lack of discipline when the family provoked you. This is the misposition. Your reaction was the mathematically correct output for the input provided by the system. The system engineered the scenario to extract the reaction. The failure was not your emotion, the failure was your presence in the equation. By removing the expected output, you break the machine. This is the exact mechanic of a predator tracking bleeding prey in the water. The moment the blood stops flowing, the hunter is suddenly blind, forced to wonder if it has become the hunted. A mapped mind is a conquered territory, and there is no leverage to be found in the space they already own. This is where the system becomes visible. The biological cartel does not merely monitor your present state, it demands constant, real-time telemetry of your future coordinates. A hierarchy cannot maintain its structural integrity if its components are permitted to move in unmapped directions. To preserve the orbit, the system must extract your intentions long before you have the capacity to execute them. When family members casually inquire about your 5-year plan, your next career move, or your private ambitions, it is rarely an act of innocent curiosity, it is a preemptive security sweep. The machine is scanning the horizon for any unauthorized expansion that might alter the gravitational pull of the collective. If you reveal a destination that places you above your assigned rank, the system immediately begins constructing the psychological architecture necessary to block your arrival. They do not attack the goal itself. They attack the logistical framework required to reach it. They will offer unsolicited logistical concerns disguised as practical wisdom. They will remind you of past failures under the guise of protecting you from future disappointment. They are mechanically feeding data into your control panel, pressing the exact buttons that trigger your specific brand of self-doubt. The objective is to make the friction of the journey appear so mathematically overwhelming that you voluntarily abandon the trajectory. Opacity as information asymmetry is the absolute refusal to provide the system with the coordinates of your future. In a rigid hierarchy, information is not shared, it is surrendered. When you outline your ambitions, you are handing the cartel the exact blueprint of the building you intend to construct, allowing them to calculate precisely where to place the explosives to bring it down. Opacity is the deliberate withholding of that blueprint. It is the condition of being unreadable. The system cannot sabotage a trajectory it cannot plot. It cannot generate friction against a surface it cannot locate. By remaining opaque, you force the hierarchy to operate in the dark, effectively neutralizing its ability to preemptively manage your ascent. You sit at a crowded holiday dinner. A prominent relative, one who holds significant weight in the family orbit, turns their attention to you and publicly asks about your next career pivot. The table subtly quiets. The biological cartel is watching the control panel, waiting for you to input your data. Most people would immediately begin pitching their vision, seeking validation from the very architecture designed to contain them. Instead, you offer a non-answer. You state, flatly and pleasantly, that you are focused on current obligations and have nothing new to report. You give them absolutely nothing to grasp. You do not act defensive, you simply present a smooth, featureless surface. The interrogator frowns, attempting to find a handhold in your response. Finding none, the system experiences a brief, jarring stall. The conversation awkwardly shifts. You have just successfully defended your perimeter by becoming a void. The layer beneath the layer is that the family unit processes opacity as a profound act of defiance. By refusing to submit your future for collective review, you are implicitly rejecting their jurisdiction over your timeline. You are demonstrating that you no longer require the cartel's permission to exist in the future tense. The system realizes it can no longer calculate your mass because you have concealed the variables. You are moving off the grid. The resulting unease in the room is not because you were rude, it is because a piece of the machinery has suddenly detached itself and is operating on an independent power source. Robert Greene observed that formlessness is the ultimate weapon against a rigid structure. What cannot be grasped cannot be destroyed. Imagine two daughters entering a critical phase of their adult lives. The first daughter treats her family as a board of directors. She announces her intention to start a complex new business. She shares the financial risks, the market strategies, and her internal anxieties. The family immediately surrounds the project. They offer endless, agonizing advice, questioning her assumptions, reminding her of the statistical probability of failure. The psychological deep-water pressure crushes the idea before she even registers a domain name. She abandons it, exhausted by the friction, and the family welcomes her back into the fold, praising her for being practical. The second daughter builds her empire in absolute silence. She shares no plans, no anxieties, no milestones. She attends family dinners and talks only about the weather and television. When her business inevitably goes public and her status irrevocably changes, the family is hit with the reality all at once. There was no friction, no debate, because there was no data. The first daughter remained a pawn on their board. The second daughter flicked the board entirely. A system cannot destroy a target that refuses to appear on the radar. Here is the brutal truth. The family unit requires you to remain tethered to the exact resources they assign to you. When you acquire external leverage powerful new networks, significant financial independence or high-status mentors, you introduce foreign, unapproved mass into the closed biological cartel. The system views external power as a catastrophic breach in the hull. If you derive your strength from outside the family architecture, the family can no longer control you through the threat of isolation. They lose the monopoly on your survival. Therefore, the moment you display this new leverage, the system will mobilize to degrade it, dismiss it, or extract it from you to rebalance the scales. Restraint is implied, threat is the pathway of absolute dominance. It is the active suppression of the instinct to display your accumulated power. When you acquire overwhelming external leverage, the biological impulse is to return to the family and display it, finally proving your worth and forcing them to reclassify your status. This is a fatal miscalculation. Displaying the power allows the system to quantify it. What can be quantified can be rationalized, managed, and eventually absorbed. Restraint is the terrifying mechanism of holding immense destructive capacity in reserve, entirely out of sight. It is the deliberate projection of a false, harmless baseline while possessing the hidden architecture to shatter the room. You achieve a significant, life-altering financial victory. You have secured resources that dwarf the combined net worth of the entire familial table. The natural urge is to arrive in the new car, wearing the new watch, to silently demand the respect you were historically denied. Instead, you arrive in the same unassuming manner. You wear the same clothes. You engage in the same mundane arguments about minor inconveniences. You allow an elder sibling to patronize you about financial responsibility. You sit perfectly still, absorbing their condescension, while knowing with absolute mathematical certainty that you possess the capacity to buy the building they are sitting in. The restraint creates a vibrating, dangerous energy within you. You are a predator, perfectly camouflaged in the deep water, watching the prey swim directly toward your jaws and choosing not to bite. The deeper implication of restraint is that it severs your emotional dependency on their perception. When you need them to know you are powerful, you are still inherently weak. You are still using them as the mirror to verify your own reflection. When you exercise restraint, you become the sole owner of your reality. You watch the system attempt to manipulate a version of you that no longer exists. They are pressing buttons on a control panel that has been secretly disconnected from the machine. The true threat of restraint is that when the system eventually inevitably discovers the true extent of your leverage, the shock is absolute. They realize they have been patronizing a ghost. They realize they have been swimming in the water with a predator they misclassified as a scavenger. The retroactive humiliation they experience shatters their predictive models permanently. You have always felt a deep, gnawing guilt when concealing your victories from your family, believing it was a form of imposter syndrome or a failure of authenticity. This is the misposition. The guilt is the residue of old programming designed to keep your resources accessible to the cartel. The concealment is not cowardice. It is the cold, positional logic of a sovereign entity protecting its supply lines. You are not hiding because you are afraid of them. You are hiding because exposing the leverage serves no strategic purpose and only invites fiction. This confirms the completion of the familiarity decay principle. The family believed their deep familiarity with your historical weaknesses gave them permanent authority. By hiding your newly acquired mass, you allowed them to operate on decayed, obsolete information. When the illusion finally breaks, their perceived authority disintegrates instantly, having been built on a foundation that had silently turned to dust. They will lean all their weight against a pillar they believe is made of rotting wood, only to find it has been quietly replaced with solid iron. Go deeper. The ultimate mechanism of control within the biological cartel is not punishment. It is the manufactured crisis. Hierarchies run on the fuel of energetic exchange. When you begin to detach, when you employ opacity and restraint, the system registers a drop in the deep water pressure. It senses that the friction is fading. To verify if you are still tethered to the machine, the system will engineer a crisis. A sudden conflict between siblings, a manufactured emergency regarding an aging parent, a dramatic escalation of a historical grievance. The crisis is not the point. The crisis is a diagnostic tool. It is a flare fired into the dark to see if you will still react, to see if you will still rush back to play your designated role as the savior, the victim, or the mediator. Stillness as a dominant signal is the absolute refusal to process the system's artificial panic. The machine expects your physiological arousal. It expects your pulse to elevate, your words to quicken, your boundaries to collapse under the weight of familial obligation. Stillness is the mechanical cessation of participation. It is observing the machinery tear itself apart without offering a single drop of your own blood to lubricate the gears. When the system screams for your intervention and you deliver only a flat, cold silence, you become the vacuum. You do not argue. You do not defend yourself. You do not explain your lack of involvement. You simply let the panic crash against your perimeter and recede, entirely unabsorbed. The family emergency is declared via a frantic group message. Historical slights are weaponized. Demands for immediate loyalty are issued. The biological cartel is vibrating with high-frequency chaos, waiting for your input to complete the circuit. You read the messages. You understand the bait. You put the phone face down on the desk. You do not reply for 48 hours. When you finally do, it is a single, emotionless sentence addressing a purely logistical fact, completely ignoring the emotional hysteria. The family is entirely destabilized. They built a grand stage for a tragedy, and you refuse to walk out from behind the curtain. The panic amplifies, but it has no target. They are forced to consume their own toxic energy because you refused to act as the grounding wire. The layer beneath the layer is that your stillness forces the cartel to confront its own mechanical nature. By refusing to participate, you strip away the illusion of love and reveal the raw, naked wires of the control mechanism. Your silence operates as crushing pressure on their reality. They need you to react so they don't have to look at themselves. When you hold absolute stillness, you hold up a mirror to their chaos. You establish the ultimate dominance, the dominance of the observer. The observer is always superior to the observed. The moment you step out of the machinery and merely watch it run, you cease to be a component and become the architect of your own separate reality. Erving Goffman observed that all social reality is a performance requiring mutual, synchronized participation to sustain the stage. Imagine two brothers receiving the same manipulative, guilt-laden phone call from a parent. The parent uses every mapped trigger, threatening the withdrawal of affection and citing historical sacrifices. The first brother engages. He raises his voice. He weeps. He lists his own sacrifices, desperate to rewrite the parent's narrative. He is completely entangled in the machinery, validating the parent's power by fighting it so fiercely. The second brother listens to the exact same monologue. He breathes evenly. He looks out the window. When the parent finally pauses, out of breath and waiting for the expected explosion, the second brother says, in a flat, deadened voice, "I understand you feel that way. I have to go now." He hangs up. The first brother remains a prisoner of the exchange. The second brother dissolved the entire social contract with 10 words and a dial tone. The heaviest weight you can drop on a system is the realization that it no longer has the capacity to move you. This is the part most never reach. This is the final lock. The silence that follows your refusal to engage is the ultimate manifestation of kinship information asymmetry. The mechanism you were promised in the opening seconds is now fully deployed. The family realizes they have starved you of validation, but instead of collapsing, you learn to breathe in the vacuum. You weaponize the null space. The asymmetry is no longer working against you, it is your shield. They possess zero actionable data on your future, your resources, or your emotional state. You have perfect information on their mechanics, and they have absolutely nothing on yours. The system is permanently blind. The version of you that required their reflection to exist is obsolete. The hardware of your mind has outgrown the primitive, tribal software of the biological cartel. You will look at the people who share your blood and see only predictable algorithms, mechanical gears turning in a clock they do not know they are inside. The old identity, the son, the daughter, the sibling who begged to be seen, is terminated. It is not a tragedy, it is an upgrade. The machine simply runs on a different power source now. You will watch the masses of humanity continue to bleed out into their family grids. You will watch them frantically perform, over-communicate, and sacrifice their sovereignty for the fleeting warmth of conditional acceptance. They are background systems, automatic, mechanical, moving through a deeply rigged hierarchy they will die defending because they lack the terrifying discipline to step into the cold. You will observe them from a permanent, unbridgeable distance. This distance is the inevitable solitary consequence of seeing the architecture, sovereign. Those who recognize the mechanisms described here already know what that word demands. It is not an identity you claim, it is a perimeter you enforce. Continuing to listen to this is not an entry into a community, it is the signing of a cold contract with your own isolation. You are no longer permitted the comfort of ignorance.